Anthony with the pump fake and a one dribble inside to the long two, and he makes it. That's been his game his whole career. But look at him smiling. We go, my bad. The long two.
Welcome everyone to another episode of The Long Two. I am Pete Rogers. He is Natty Wallach, and we are a Carmelo Stanthony podcast and occasionally talk fantasy basketball. Natty, Happy New Year. How you been?
Happy New Year to you too, buddy. It is 2020.
What a time to be alive.
That's a good sign for our Long Two podcast.
Ooh, I have to agree with you. I feel like this is the year of The Long Two.
And everything started off so well this new year. You know, it's just been total smooth sailing right away.
Yeah.
So
everyone who thought that the terribleness or the shittiness of 2019 would, blow over into a new decade. No, it is still just as great as always in the 2020 year.
Yeah, it's it's nice to have consistency.
That's what we look for. We look for consistency in all facets of life, and we are getting it in spades right now.
Right. Just to jump right in here, Detroit has had a very long winter of discontent, and I'm just looking up the Red Wings record right now just to make sure that every Detroit and Michigan team sucks.
Right. We don't want to speak broadly about all Detroit sports without knowing all the facts. And yes, can be confirmed. Detroit's sporting teams not doing great right now.
So we didn't have a lot of trade talk before our holiday break, and now things are heating up in the NBA.
Yes, sir.
The team that looks like they're a seller, especially since Blake Griffin had surgery and will now be out indefinitely, is the Detroit Pistons.
Your boys. Start us off, Natty. It only feels right for you to start the podcast and to introduce all of the glory, because there's one name. We talked about Kevin Love. Kevin Love is a name, of course, that has been thrown around trade rumors for a while, going back to last year. But there is one name now that is the hot ticket name. It is your boy, Andre Drummond. Talk to us. How are you feeling? What is going on? How are the Pistons doing? Everything sounds great.
The Pistons are doing great. Everything in Southeast Michigan is doing really, really well. Thank you for asking.
Oh, you're welcome.
Flint still doesn't have drinkable water. Every single sports team is bad. I did see this. The Tigers have spent more this offseason than the Chicago Cubs. And I feel like that's an indictment of both teams.
It's going to bode well.
Right. And the Lions obviously had a magical year. Won't see you in the Super Bowl, I suppose. That's rough about your Pats, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm all right with it. Well, am I? No.
Oh, really? Have you had enough? You're like, this is a different feeling. I haven't been in the conference championship.
Well, it's like, you know what? I get to stress-free watch football now. Kind of nice.
Yeah, it's got to be new for you guys. When was the last time the Patriots didn't make the conference championship game?
It was back in, might have been 2012.
A lot's changed.
A lot has changed. But let's talk Andre Drummond trade rumors, because that's the sexy thing on the block right now as we're quickly approaching the trade deadline. We got about another month for things to kind of heat up a little bit more.
Speed up though.
Right. And things are going to hopefully start moving quickly. But this seems like the big name now that is likely to get moved at the deadline.
I don't know if it's likely. Drummond is, one of the two really good trade assets on the Pistons right now. I think the other one is Derrick Rose, who's been playing really well.
Better than his MVP season, if you're looking at pure stats.
Right.
Which is preposterous.
I almost feel like there's more demand for D Rose's talents and skill set and position on the floor than there is for Drummond right now. So a few facts: Drummond makes $27 million a year. That's tied for 35th most with Bradley Beal, Hassan Whiteside, and Anthony Davis. So there's at least 35 other guys that have higher salaries. He is movable. The thing is, who really needs an expensive center who, while he is a great rebounder, he's a more average on offense and defense as a whole. Like, he's a good player.
Yeah.
But what are you willing to give up for him? And he might be going into free agency if he doesn't re-sign with whoever trades for him. So it's, most likely a rental.
Yeah.
So Atlanta has been the team that sort of started the rumors, I think. Like, a source came out and said, Detroit and Atlanta are talking. So it was most likely either Atlanta or Detroit. It behooves Detroit to release
to get as many suitors as possible in there.
Right. But I really only feel like there's a handful of teams. Like, Atlanta, I guess, makes sense just because why not do something? I also feel like Atlanta is going to use a trade to get rid of one of their rookies, just to sort of, focus the team a little bit more. I think they like Kevin Huerter more than they like either of their two rookies right now. Boston could use maybe an upgrade at center, and I think Drummond would be an upgrade there, but I don't really know. I mean, I sent you some trade ideas earlier, like that. The trade can work, but Marcus Smart leaves. I don't know how you feel about that. Dallas would be an interesting team. You could get Drum and D-Rose there, but it's mainly like spare parts coming back probably. Maybe Tim Hardaway if you want him to come back and go blue. Love him. Maybe Portland if they didn't want to do Kevin Love. But I don't think Milwaukee makes sense. I don't really think that the Lakers make sense. I don't think that the Clippers you can go through all of the teams that might be thinking about getting an upgrade for this season alone, and it's not really that big.
I think all the teams you mentioned you've covered most of the bases. I think the Hawks, I read an article in The Ringer that was talking about it and just kind of covering all of the different bases about teams that have expressed interest or seem that it could be interested. The Hawks make not a lot of sense to me because of the fact that it's one of those, it feels like one of those moves that would rapidly accelerate the timeline because of the fact that you're trading, unlike a team like the Celtics or the Raptors, who could trade for him. That's a move where you're trading for Drummond for this year because you think that you are you have a chance to make some noise in the playoffs, maybe even make it to the conference finals, and you know that you're going to take on either Philly or Giannis in the Bucks, and you need size, right? Like replacing Marc Gasol for Andre Drummond, and for the Celtics getting Drummond in there to be able to like do the Aaron Baines, stand in the lane, be as big as possible to slow Giannis down. Like that makes sense for those two teams. For the
thing
Hawks,
is, though, that Drummond doesn't really play well against Embiid.
Yeah,
so,
that's not helpful. But I'm putting my expectation on the Bucks being the one who you're facing in the conference final.
Yeah. Hey, ditto. Hopefully, my God, that would be terrifying for Bucks fans if that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that would be terrifying for Bucks fans. And so the Sixers, you're right, you might be facing him, and he doesn't have the greatest track record against Embiid. But at least you are adding size. And I think the Raptors are the team that makes the most sense to me, just because of the success that they had with Marc Gasol, and having that kind of big guy come in and be able to give them a presence in the middle. And so I think that makes the most sense. The Celtics, like you said before the pod, you sent me some trades. The Celtics, there's no contract that lines up. It's Gordon Hayward lines up, but you're not trading Gordon Hayward because he's much more valuable than.
That would be so sad. You can't.
It's not happening. And so it's like basically trading all of your young depth for the Celtics for Drummond. Like Marcus Smart is the closest contract that you can build around, and then you're tossing in, young guys. You're probably throwing in Daniel Tyson there. Maybe you're also tossing in their French guy whose name I'm spacing on.
Right. Like you could keep Time Lord
Right.
And maybe you want to trade for Drum because by having him, you'll be able to re-sign him. So if Boston or if
Right.
Toronto really
Right.
believed in him and were like, no, we know how to play him so that he'll be a real complementary player.
Right.
And at least in Toronto's case, like they could just be like, oh man, we weren't going to re-sign you. Like we'd rather have the cap space. This was just a 1-year thing. Again,
Sure.
we love doing that.
Yeah, and if you have him on your team, you get the first, up close look as to like what he can do, what he's willing to do, what works for him. But for the Hawks, like you're a team that doesn't have any aspirations this year, and by trading for him, giving up assets to get him, you are now, if you don't sign him long term, what was the point of getting him in house and signing him long term? Now you're investing a ton of money in him and you're doing the accelerating your lineup where the point is like you're suddenly taking this young team and being like, all right, well, we got to be good now because we've started putting money into like veteran players who are going to, give us that leg up. And is that really, are the Hawks are they at that point right now? Is this going to unnecessarily speed up the timeline? Similar to what happened with, Anthony Davis in New Orleans, where New Orleans was like, oh shit, Anthony Davis is really fucking good. We're going to get Drew Holiday. We're going to like get these pieces to build around him, as opposed to being like, look, let's give Trae Young 2 to 3 years of a kind of a shitty team. And we'll talk to him about this and build up draft capital, get a bunch of young players, and then hopefully have a Philly spike where now it's like, all right, we're going to bring in, we have these guys who have been in around for 3 to 4 years. They've developed, they're young, they're ready to go. We're going to bring in now 1 to 2 veterans. And now suddenly we're maybe not a championship contender, but now we're a viable playoff team in the East. I don't know if the Hawks are there. And I feel like trading for Drummond is going to instantly force that team to be like, we need to be a playoff team, as opposed to being like, hey, it's okay being bottom of the barrel for a little bit of time so that we can really develop a strong young core and then go from there.
The Hawks are 8-29.
Yeah.
Which is the worst record in the entire NBA. It is 1 game worse than the Golden State Warriors.
That's an impressive feat by the Hawks.
Yeah, because
the Warriors also suck. I don't know if you know this, people. I don't know if we all forgot about this during the break, but the Warriors not good at basketball anymore.
Yeah, the Hawks are even worse than the Knicks, and that is, man. I like, again, before the season started, people were like, yeah, well, the Hawks could make the playoffs, including you and I. And it's it's really, really fun. I really didn't think they would be this bad, but I also can't remember the last time a last place team made a trade like this.
Right. It wouldn't make sense. And that's why I think you
would have to know that Drummond was going to re-sign. Like,
right.
You would have to know that.
But I think this is why I think you're 100% right when you said at the top of things, Detroit has to be the one who leaked this. Like, there's no way the Hawks are leaking this.
Sure.
This is Detroit leaking it, being like, hey, we've got some calls. Someone come give us a good offer. And we'll see what happens. And then because we touched on the other 2 Eastern teams who I think would make sense. The Mavs, I have heard connections to, and you mentioned them as a team that could possibly do it. I don't think it's a bad move for them, but I wrote an article today for Fake Teams, which is all talking about Kevin Love trade destination since that relationship is basically in the toilet. At least Andre Drummond, there's like maybe a 50, like it's probably a 50-50 he gets traded at the deadline. I would be amazed if Kevin Love doesn't get traded at the deadline, because he is all but, that relationship with the Cleveland Cavaliers is dead. And so I had the Mavs as one of my top landing spots for him, because while Drummond would certainly help the Mavericks, he would also clog the paint, which is something that you don't want to do with Luka. That's one of the reasons why they've been so effective with Luka, is his ability to have a wide open paint with Kristaps and how that team's constructed. And Kevin Love would still give you, the rebounding prowess, maybe not as great as Drummond, but still a very viable offensive, especially rebounder, great passer for a big, and 3-point shooting who can stretch the court. And if you want to talk to me about defense, I mean, come on. What are we doing? Who cares about defense these days? Plus, you got Chris Stapps in there to cover the paint. So I would personally would much rather see Kevin Love go to the Mavericks than Andre Drummond. But I do think that that's another team that makes sense considering the success that they had with a guy like Tyson Chandler, decades ago.
Oh, sure. I would, if I were a Mavericks fan, I would rather have Dwayne Dedmon instead of Love or Drummond. Dedmon is not the same quality player as either of those two guys, but he also doesn't make as much money. And he is, he was shooting the three last year. He hasn't done particularly well in Sacramento, but he's basically demanding a trade because Rashawn Holmes has played him out of the starting lineup.
Yeah.
Rashawn Holmes great this year.
I thought once Dedmon was coming back that Holmes' minutes were going to drop it, so I didn't add him in fantasy, and then someone else in my league got him, and now I'm really upset.
But I mean, like, I don't really see why Dallas should feel like they need to lock someone in right now when making the playoffs this year should be good enough.
It's already had a schedule for them. Yeah, right.
I mean, if you really think that they could win the title this year, then yeah, sure. Like, try to get as good as you possibly can. I don't think the Mavericks can do that, but the playoffs are about who's the best player on the floor in any particular series. And there are a couple of matchups where possibly Luka is the best.
Oh, I think in the West, there's 4 teams maybe that would be able to put a better player out on the court than Luka.
Yeah, it's a lot of the playoffs is not just, the apex player, but how much depth and how well they complement each other. And Drummond, he's going to be a very big commitment, and you already have 2 really big commitments to Kristaps and eventually Luka. So I would rather be a little bit more flexible around the edges. So I would prefer a cheaper option if I were a Dallas fan. But I mean, shit, just because you trade for Drummond doesn't mean that you have to re-sign him. So they could try to get as far as they can this year, see what happens. And then, like, what do you really care about any player on Dallas except for the unicorn and Luka?
Right.
Everybody else is totally replaceable.
And Dallas has the contracts to line up pretty easily. I mean, you got Tim Hardaway Jr., who's making just an absurd amount of money. And so that right there is
there
your kind
go,
of
blue.
That right there is your contract balance in order to get Drummond, and then you throw in some picks and maybe 1 or 2 other pieces. But yeah, so that move for the Mavericks could, and like you're right. We talk about, or I just was talking about how it's like, well, build up a young core and wait for your shot or whatever craziness I was spouting 10 minutes ago. Luka Doncic is in the midst of an MVP season. How many times is that going to happen? Hopefully a lot. Right? Hopefully, Luka, this is just
20,
like
right.
Luka taking 1 step on a 30-step ladder that he still has to climb to the top for. But it's also something where it's like Luka's playing at a phenomenally high level, a level no one anticipated him to do right now. Why not be like, fuck it, let's go all in. Let's, build as best of a team as we can and just see where we ride with this. And if it works and we don't make it anywhere, well, we'll sign Andre and we'll run with this again and see if we can continue building a team with it. It'll be interesting.
All of this has to be thought about from the team's point of view in terms of this coming off season as well, which is supposed to be pretty light in terms of quality of free agents.
Yeah.
Everybody's waiting for the year after this summer. So all of the teams that do have cap space are also kind of shitty and trying to tank. So if the bad teams are going to be responsible this offseason and not give out big contracts to players that they don't need, then some of the better teams might be able to get deals. They might be able to hand out 1 or 2 year below market cost salaries to players that could really help them. So I wonder if they think, why trade for Drummond now when we can probably get a couple of other players that will combine to be him at a cheaper cost this summer.
Yeah.
But you're also totally right. Like when you have an apex player, or when you have 3 of them, maybe 4 of them, like the Celtics do, you're doing yourself a disservice by not trying as hard as you can.
Yeah.
Especially Boston. Like, you don't give a shit about Enes Kanter. Like, you don't. Is Marcus Smart really going to stop you from doing something that you think can win you the title, or at least get you to the conference finals? I don't know. I mean, I know everybody loves Marcus Smart, me too, and I would love him in Detroit. But
this is the main reason that you're putting this out into the world.
If Danny Ainge thinks that we need an interior rebounder and that puts us over the top, even though he's not good against Embiid, then you sort of have to do that,
right?
Especially with the way your wings are playing. I mean, if Gordon Hayward is Gordon Hayward by the time the playoffs roll around,
oh my God,
you can't start Marcus Smart.
No.
Yeah. So I don't know. He's a little. He's less. The better Gordon Hayward gets, the less important Marcus Smart is, I think, just in terms of this season. Who knows going forward? But anyway, like, if you're the Lakers, would you try to combine Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee and Kyle Kuzma into Drum? Like, there would have to be other stuff, but would you rather have Drummond than those 2 centers?
I mean, I would rather have, 2020 dunk contest candidate Dwight Howard on my team.
I kind of like those 2 centers. I feel like they do pretty good things that you'll want them to be able to do in the playoffs, and you don't know that Drum can do those things.
Yeah, I would. If I'm the Lakers, if I'm the Lakers or the Bucks, I would have a hard time messing with like where you're at right now.
Yeah, top 2 teams in the league, but
things are running pretty smoothly for them. But I understand always wanting to look into improve. It's more so for me that I think Drummond, because of the fact that he is such a traditional big, I think you need to have any team that's trading for him needs to have a clear idea of what they want to do and how they're going to build their offense with him to be a part of it. And, for the Lakers, is that what they're missing? Are they missing a interior presence when you've got Anthony Davis there and Dwight? Like, to me, the Lakers, you're looking more for some guy who can just sit in the corner and catch threes.
Or someone like D-Rose who can run downhill and ignite offenses and just get you buckets when you need to.
I mean, you could do the Kuzma D-Rose swap.
I'll do that all day long.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that if I'm the Lakers, I'd make that. I'd be intrigued by that because Kuzma hasn't shown as much as you wanted him to, and in crunch minutes, can you play him?
I mean, I just don't know. And it's funny because it's hard to think about a LeBron team outside of the context of how he's treated young players in the past.
Mm-hmm.
He's basically said, if I don't think that you're going to help me this year, then you're
right gonzo.
Yeah, we're just going to get rid of you and we'll get a vet, somebody I know, someone I've played with before. But I mean, I'm sure the Lakers will make a move. I'm sure they'll trade Kyle Kuzma, but he's only like $1.5 million or something. Like, his contract is so small that it makes him sort of hard to trade, which is hysterical. I do want to return to the Hawks though, because I think what you just said, like, the team needs to have a plan for what they want to do with Drummond. I can sort of see a logic to Atlanta saying Trey is an outside player. We want to have, or we see the value in having a traditional anchor big man in the paint that will complement him. Like, Trey doesn't need to, have every lane all the way open in order to be effective. He can shoot from anywhere past half court. So I mean, maybe that would be why.
No, I see it too. I mean, the pick and roll, Trae Young and Drummond in a pick and roll would be, it's not easy to guard. Those are, Andre Drummond rolling to the hoop is not an easy person to stop. And Trae Young could, like you said, shoot anywhere from half court. So that is a good, clearly a good place to be putting the team. And with, the Warriors lineup of death over, like the league could be shifting back to big guys. I mean, the Sixers, their whole starting lineup is like whatever 6'6" and up. So, you could be the NBA could be rolling back to like having a more traditional big back in the middle of your defense or middle of your team. So, yeah, I'm not against it. It's just it does. My worry is that it does that accelerant of a young team that has happened from time to time that then kind of ultimately torpedoes, or just speeds the progression up maybe faster than it really realistically can go. But I don't know. Who knows? I mean, Trae Young is fucking good at basketball. So, and if you're getting rid of one of these rookies who maybe aren't developing as quickly as you would have expected or contributing as quickly as you expected, then maybe that's not the worst thing.
Can't you just see the Knicks trading for Drum, though?
Oh, my God. The Knicks are going to trade at the deadline for Drummond and Kevin Love and be like, guys,
we did it.
We did it. You want some big-ass names at the Garden? And guess what we just fucking did?
Yeah, we signed all those schmoes, all those power forwards, just so we could get our front court of the future. By the way, we had to get rid of Mitch Rob, but
as the Pistons fanboy, what is your gut feeling percentage that Drummond gets traded at the deadline?
Oh, I think he's getting traded for sure. But I don't think that it'll be a trade that is that great.
Mm-hmm.
Unless something nuts happens, I just don't see the demand, and I don't really see the desperation. I mean, some of the teams that might be interested in him might just be like, yeah, well, we can just do it in the summer, and maybe he won't be getting as much money as he thinks he is. We didn't talk about Portland really. Like they're a nexus point because they seem like they could be a likely destination for both Kevin Love and Drummond.
Mm-hmm.
So that team, though, does adding one of those two players help you this season? I don't. They're in such a weird situation, and it's fantastic that they can't trade Carmelo.
Oh, it's just brilliant. It fills my heart with warmth.
This out. Yeah, it's fantastic, and I'm so glad that he's done well. Hell yes, Melo back in our lives. I do think that Drummond gets traded. I think that Derrick Rose gets traded. If everything goes well, I think that Langston Galloway, Tony Snell, and Markieff Morris could also be traded. Markieff is injured right now, but they should just be trying to trade absolutely everybody except, you know what? Fucking trade Luke Kennard too. He's from Duke. I don't care. But they're going to keep Bruce Brown, their young combo guard, I guess. Sviatoslav Mikhailia, Christian Wood. Keep everybody who's basically under 25. And they are starting Sekou Doumbouya, our draft pick from this year.
Yeah, baby.
Raw. And is, a project, quote unquote. And he has done well since he started playing. So if you're looking for a front court player, you should pick up Doumbouya because he is absolutely available. And if we do trade these guys, if the Pistons trade these guys, then he's due for a lot more minutes. If we don't trade anyone, I mean, Blake is out for the year. So players on the Pistons are going to be getting more his minutes anyway. If we don't trade Drum, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I also think that maybe it's possible they could still make the playoffs, but it's very apparent now with Blake getting injured again that the Pistons cannot form the basis of this team around this front court. It just doesn't work. And you gave it a shot, I love them for trying it. They took a big swing, and Blake was all NBA last year.
Yeah.
They got swept by the Bucks in the first round. If they hadn't played the Bucks, maybe they would have won a game. But Blake did his job last year, and then he played hurt. And, I don't know how the rest of Pistons Nation really feels about it, but if Blake had been healthy again this year and playing it at all NBA level, then I think things would be different.
Yeah. An optimistic Pistons fan. Natty Walk, that's what we can say about you.
Oh, we're going to be bad for the next decade, though. like Luka will be ascended over the next 10 years. Luka is going to be a top 5 fantasy player, in my opinion. Maybe the number 1 player if he gets past Giannis. And for that entire decade, I think the Pistons will not be good.
All right. Well, we've reached the midpoint of the season and the midpoint of this episode. And so we're going to talk about some fantasy standouts. But before we do, we are going to take a quick ad break. All right. Since we are halfway through the NBA season, we decided we're going to take a look back and we're going to talk about some guys who've stood out for us in fantasy so far. And Natty, I don't want to spring this on you, and I hope I'm not springing this on you because I know we talked about this before recording, but I have both positive and negative standouts. So just wanted to give you a heads up so that I get the credit for going above and beyond while you are seen as someone who only thinks black or white. So, you know.
Well, I don't think bad things do happen in the NBA. It's just bad luck, you know?
There
so
you go.
It's not bad play or bad planning. It's just the rain falls on the just and the unjust alike, and the Pistons should have won the title this year.
Pistons should win the title every year. God bless. So why don't you start us off then, Natty? Why don't you give us a player who, through the halfway point of the season, you think has stood out in a positive way?
Okay, so this is off a Kirk Goldsberry tweet, which is just an awesome Twitter.
A must follow.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know what.
Oh, that's right. You don't. Sorry, you're too cool for the Twitters. Must follow means that they are an important Twitter account that you should be following so that you can get all the good information that they offer. Just like how the Long Two at the Long Two podcast, a must follow.
Absolutely. Boom. Do what Pete says. Follow all these people. You must do it. Anyway, Duncan Robinson on the Miami Heat is the most efficient jump shooter this year in the NBA. He is his effective field goal percentage is the best in the NBA. On that list are people like Jay Wells is here. So it's Duncan Robinson, then our favorite Davis Bertans, who everybody is trying to trade for, which is amazing.
And their
JJ Redick
brother is trying to trade for them.
Yeah, I mean, we can, if DC wants Drummond, we can just take Bertans.
Let's just make that trade and we'll call it even.
Sure, you got it, buddy. Although, God, would you do Blake for John Wall?
Saucy.
Like, those teams would fit better after that trade, I think.
I mean, why the fuck not? Who says no? Roll with it.
Washington would get out of money earlier because Blake's contract is shorter than Wall's. And then Detroit would have a star who could, like, start the second part of his career with a new team.
Yeah, why not?
Anyway, Jaren Jackson Jr. is 4 on the list, which is really incredible to me and awesome. That's a great sign for 3J. And then Joe Harris. Duncan Robinson's been absolutely fucking amazing this year. And God bless the Heat for finding, all these players and really working them and making sure that they know what they're doing. The Heat are good, like we said they would be. And it's really quite something to be the best jump shooter in the NBA. And that's what Duncan Robinson is right now.
Yeah. I wish I had more to respond to or bring to the table other than this is the first I've ever heard of Duncan Robinson existing. So, hey, good for him. Good for you, Duncan, for making all of your shots.
Well, he's been on my fantasy team for quite a while.
Oh, there we go.
Those threes. Yeah, I mean, he's like one of the top. Where are these? Anyway, he's one of the top 3-point shooters in the league right now. His ratios. Yeah, he's 19th, 7.2 3-point attempts per game, which is 0.1 less than Danilo Gallinari.
Mm-hmm.
He's just an ace shooter, man. And maybe it has something to do with how Miami plays and how they use their perimeter players. But, he's getting dimes from Jimmy Buckets, and he's just sinking those long shots. It's fucking amazing. And good for him. He's had a great first half.
Love it. So my first guy I want to talk about is a guy who we've talked about on this show before. But if I'm picking an early, biggest fantasy surprise of the year, he's my locked-in number 1 seed right now. It's Devontae Graham for the Hornets, who stole all the Terry Rozier hype this offseason and offseason hoopla, and has become, phenomenal for the Hornets. He's 6th in assists per game, which has been the biggest asset that he's kind of brought to the Hornets, as well as being able to score and grab the occasional rebound, shooting 38% from 3. He's 21 on the ESPN player rater for fantasy-wise, so he is come absolutely out of nowhere. Someone who I think even the biggest Charlotte fan probably didn't draft onto their fantasy team, but has emerged as a stud, a top 25 player in fantasy through the first half. So got to give him kudos as one of the biggest standouts so far this year.
Yeah, before the season, he was just the dude with the apostrophe at the end of his name.
Which is also a baller move. Like when you're
absolutely.
naming your kid, random apostrophes in the name, it's a good sell.
And he's just cool as hell. And, not to mention Terry Rozier, his backcourt mate, is also a top 40 player. Terry's turned out to have a pretty good year.
Yeah.
The Hornets are, they're in the 9th seed right now in the East. They're 1 game back of Brooklyn. They could make the fucking playoffs.
Which is, terrific. I'm here for it. I was going to say preposterous, and then halfway through, I was like, you know what? Why be negative? Let's do this. Let's go Hornets.
Yeah, absolutely. MJ's team. They should always be rooted for. It would be absolutely ridiculous if that happened.
It would be amazing. Michael Jordan would he has to win, general manager of the year, right?
Well, he should win executive of the year for firing Rich Cho. Finally. Sweet God, Jesus. Wait, their GM now is Mitch Kupchak? Is that right?
Sure.
I think it is.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah. Like if they make the playoffs, that probably means that Orlando slipped out. Or maybe Brooklyn, I suppose, if Kyrie doesn't come back. And if Charlotte makes the playoffs and the Chicago Bulls don't, that would just be icing on the cake. Because everybody, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people thought Chicago should be a playoff team this year.
Oh yeah, I saw. When we did our way back early, when we did our final playoff seedings to predicting for this season, when I was doing research for it, kind of figure out my thoughts. I saw multiple people having in like the 5 to the 6 to 5 range.
I thought they would be in the playoffs, and I hate the fucking Bulls.
Yeah.
It's great that their coach is so bad that he's basically just scuttled the entire year.
Incredible. It's an incredible feat.
I'm so happy about that. Oh my God. That's great. Like if the Bulls were in the West, they would only be better than 2 teams. Yes.
Oh boy.
They're gross. F them.
Bulls.
Yeah.
That is terrible.
Let's see. What did I want to say about that? Oh, I forget. It slipped my mind. Sorry.
Well,
I wanted
give
to say
us another guy, another standout for you this first half.
Okay. Actually, I just want to mention a few people that are in the top 100 that are interesting. So before the season, you and I were talking about Mr. Brandon Ingram.
Yes,
He is number 11 on the player rater for the season. He looks fucking sick. He is great. The only reason I don't want to see Zion this year is because I just want to keep watching Brandon Ingram do his thing. He's a great fantasy player, and I hope he has a very long career in front of him. And this health scare stuff from last year is over for good.
If
DeRozan is number 30.
Ooh.
Kelly Oubre is number 38. Good sign.
Yep.
Your boy Jaylen Brown, number 60.
Fuck yeah, Jaylen!
Number 60. He was outside the top 150 last year, I think. He was probably outside the top 300.
Jaylen motherfucking Brown getting the bag and earning it.
Yeah, it's coming together. Like God damn, they look good.
His handles have gotten so much better.
Yeah, everything's much, much, much better. They just look like they practice together.
It looks like they are. What's the word? What am I trying to say? Friends? Is that the right word? Should teammates be friendly? I don't know.
Yeah, as a Detroit fan, I don't care about any team anymore, so it's fine. I hope all of your teams fail too, and no one has sports again. And then the last is a unicorn who you were high on before the season, and he's number 66. He's having a good year.
Yeah.
So those are, I mean, DeChosen, I don't know what to say about him. I don't really know. I don't think he's a trade target. I just don't really know who needs like a guy that can't shoot threes. But he's doing his thing and he's still scoring. And it's just cool to see a player that doesn't like succumb to the winds of the league. Like he's himself. And that's always awesome to see because he's still a good player.
I'm firmly standing behind my my DeMar DeRozan gets traded to the Magic for Aaron Gordon move.
That would be so fucking incredible and would make both teams better.
Right.
Yeah, the Magic. Wait, Jonathan Isaac. We didn't even say this.
Yeah,
Jonathan
that's true.
Isaac is out. Yeah, he's out injured. So that has to change the calculus for that team, right? Like right now they're in the 7th seed, but their best player's injured.
Right. So the question is, do you just say, all right, well, lost season, or do you make the move because you've got the Charlotte Hornets nipping at your heels?
Yeah, they hear footsteps.
They hear footsteps.
Buzzing footsteps.
Buzzing footsteps. And Aaron Gordon is your best trade chip.
Yeah, for sure.
Tomorrow. Let's do this.
Although I guess you could make an argument that a center that can shoot threes is pretty. I mean, Aaron Gordon can't really shoot threes, so maybe Vucevic would have.
Oh, I think Vuce would have bigger trade value, but they just didn't. They just give him a big old contract.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Gordon is also 24 years old,
right?
And sometimes he looks like he could be one of the top 10 players in the league, although those moments are very far apart these days. But if anyone could do it, it would be the Spurs, and I would love that trade. I think that would be a great trade.
So a guy who another one of my standouts, this is not a sleeper by any stretch of the imagination, but I wanted to give this guy props, and I wanted to openly accept the L here because we on the long too. It's important, I think, as a fantasy analyst to, when you're wrong, admit your wrongdoings, and when you're right, you can take a victory lap. You've earned it. I spent most of this offseason, and Natty, you joined me for a little bit of it, but I felt like I led the charge. Not hating on Anthony Davis, but certainly not understanding the number one pick overall in redraft leagues, that he was going to be this MVP god. Him being good shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. He's amazing at basketball, but I wasn't sold on him because of health, obviously, and of course the ever-present LeBron James. But through the first half of the year, he's only missed a few games. He's second in player rater behind James Harden. If James Harden wasn't, doing things that we didn't even think possible by James Harden yet again, he shouldn't
count.
Right, exactly. Anthony Davis would easily be the number one player in fantasy right now. And he's not it's not a shocking standout, but he's been more than worth the investment. If you were in redraft leagues and you invested in him, he has repaid you in full. And so I will give him a shout out for going into LA, for being as good as he can be, and rising, like taking the national stage, and good for him.
He had 8 blocks against Detroit a couple of days ago. 8.
It's
so
incredible.
He can go fuck himself. I wouldn't take him with a top 150 pick. He eats dog shit for breakfast. You can see
it's that unbiased, the unbiased analyst. That's what
he doesn't even play basketball. Like, I don't see why people think he's cool at all.
I don't know why you think he's good. He doesn't play basketball.
I saw him kick a puppy as hard as he could. I saw that. That was a witness. I wouldn't take him number one in a redraft league over Giannis or Luka next year, even though I know he's incredible.
Yeah.
I just think that he is that incredible because LeBron's there. That might be unfair, but I think if you take LeBron away for an extended period, then Luka and Giannis will be better fantasy players.
Well, and I mean, I'm sure you saw the news. He didn't re-sign with the Lakers. The Lakers offered him a max contract, and he said no. He's going to free
Yeah,
agency.
but
Natty.
that's because
No,
he'll be able to
no,
make more money
no,
by
no,
signing.
no,
No, I agree.
no.
He's going to retire. It's this year or nothing.
He's going to the Cavaliers. He's just doing a swap with
God.
LeBron.
What would be the craziest destination? I mean, I guess it would be the Knicks. If after all this,
Oh
Anthony
my
Davis
God.
was like, "I've always wanted to play in the Garden."
Oh my God. And New York is just like, wait, no, are you kidding me? James Dolan's like, no. Are you serious right now? Are you joking me? Am I being pranked? Is this a joke?
No. The Nixiest thing would be if they were like, "Oh, dude, I'm sorry, we have Mitch Rob. Like, we just don't."
Oh my God. We just gave a
there's no
max
room.
extension to Andre Drummond and Kevin Love. Fuck.
Yeah.
We can't do that. Sorry.
The Brow is fucking amazing. He's absolutely one of the best fantasy players alive. I think the Lakers look totally deadly. Him and LeBron are the best duo in basketball. But I still wouldn't take him number one in a fantasy league. I'm sorry. There's something about him that just doesn't seem as much fun as Giannis or Luka. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I get that. He's just solid, and I spoke ill of him this offseason, so I wanted to give him some props. Do you have any other standouts that you want to bring attention to?
Yeah, I had a few things I wanted to mention. First, Big Cat is shooting 41.8% from 3-point. 41.8, and that's on 8.5 3-point attempts per game, which is 13th most in the NBA. If you're shooting better than 40% from three, you're one of the best long-range shooters in the NBA. Big Cat looks fucking incredible, and Minnesota's letting him down again. Like,
classic.
Wiggins didn't last very long.
Yeah, they should have traded. In retrospect, when we were talking about Wiggins trades, and I was like, "Well, do they trade Wiggins?" It's like, no, they 100% should have traded Wiggins. They should have sold at his absolute apex.
It's just, but it. Because everybody was saying, "Oh, he finally blossomed," and what has everybody been saying in the NBA and in fantasy this year, in all sports fantasies, that progression isn't linear. Like, not everybody improves at the same rate over the same pattern. Like, some people are late bloomers, some people it just clicks on. Maybe sometimes you get a better coach, like Minnesota did,
right?
But it's just tough to get your heart broken by Maple Jordan over and over and over again,
constantly.
Yeah. One more thing. Right now, Miami is in the 3rd seed in the East, something that you and I called before the season started.
Amen.
The Raptors are also in the 4th seed. I believe we called that as well. And OKC is in 7th in the West, something that we also called. So it's not all bad, Pete. We're doing okay.
We're doing decent.
Yeah.
Good for us.
We made some good calls. And it's awesome that those teams are in. Actually, if the playoffs started today, they wouldn't be that much different than last year. Let's see. Miami would replace Detroit in the East. Otherwise, the entire Eastern playoffs would be the same, I believe. And the Lakers and the Mavericks would replace Portland and the Warriors in the West. But otherwise, it would be the same. I thought that was a little interesting.
That is interesting. I like the thought. Well done. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out live on the show what is the best 3-point shooting percentage by a big with over 5 3-point attempts per game.
Okay, while you do that, I'm going to just mention 2 ads that people might want to consider.
Hit me with it.
Victor Oladipo is playing.
Back.
He's going to return, we think, at the end of this month or early next month. If he is available in your league, scoop him up, because that's an all-star and all-NBA player, and he'll be able to help you in your playoffs. Kevin Huerter on Atlanta, speaking of, is 22.6% owned. He's been number 42 on the player rater over the last month. He is definitely better than either of the 2 rookies on Atlanta. They love having him back. He can be a deadly player. If he's available in your league, you should pick him up as well.
There you go. All right. Well, this isn't working for me, so I am going to give up on it and instead turn to my one negative standout, so far through the halfway point, which is a guy, again, someone who we talked about this offseason, someone who I hyped up on the show. And so I want to single him out and tell him that he's doing a bad job letting me down. Miles Turner has not blossomed the way I thought he was going to blossom this year. Having a down season across the board, fewer points, rebounds, blocks, assists, shooting percentages are down. He is shooting more threes, and I think he's shooting at like 35%, which isn't terrible. So, but expected him to take a big jump, and he is being massively outplayed by his teammate Sabonis, who is, I think, 29 on ESPN player rater, while Miles Turner is 99. So if you switch those around, I would feel very confident with my Miles Turner hype this offseason, but that does not come to fruition, and such a disappointment so far.
Yeah, we really missed on that one. He was injured. And by the way, the Pacers are in the 6th seed and they're 23-14. They're a damn good team. They haven't really minded Miles not being as good as we thought he would be. I kind of wonder if maybe he's a trade candidate. Before the season, we kept thinking, oh, well, they're going to have to trade one of them. And Indiana doesn't generally make like big splashy trades. Although they got Oladipo in the Paul George trade, and that was a pretty big fucking trade. And they sent Kawhi to the Spurs, which in retrospect is just hysterical. But I do sort of feel like if they get Oladipo back, and he's Victor Oladipo, and they traded Turner for another person, I mean, they would be super dangerous in the playoffs, don't you think?
Yeah, no, I totally do. I think this would be a team that you could definitely, I mean, especially if Oladipo returns to where he was before he got injured.
Yeah. And you know what, man? It's got to be hard for Miles Turner to be playing with Sabonis. Like, I don't think that Miles Turner is bad. I think he's in an uncomfortable situation. It's a little bit weird. I guess you could say it's a little bit like Philadelphia with Simmons and Embiid, like two dudes that are sort of sharing the same space, and maybe that's not great. So, yeah, I would like to see Miles Turner in a spot where he can sort of get more of the shots or more of the action that Sabonis is taking from him right now. Because Sabonis has just looked absolutely on fire.
So good.
He's so good. Ugh, God, Indiana. Fuck them too. Fuck them all, man. Just burn the whole goddamn thing down. And hey, look at that. Detroit's losing to Cleveland in the 4th quarter by 12 points.
Relentless positivity from my co-host, Natty Waller.
Everything should burn. Do you have any like negative reviews for anybody?
No, that's it. Just had Miles Turner. You have negative reviews for the entire league?
Yeah, I think it's all going down the tubes, and I think we should get out while we can. Let's just. I will say this: neither Sacramento nor Phoenix, two teams that are playing each other tonight, have been as good as they thought they would, and I think that a bunch of us saw that coming. Like, Sacramento made some weird decisions in the offseason. Phoenix, we all thought got better, and then Ayton missed some games. So maybe they are better, but man, Sacramento, they're going to have to make a trade in order to put themselves in a position where they can get better and they can focus all of their energy on their core players. And if the cost of, they're probably going to trade Bogdan Bogdanovic, and if they do it to the Lakers, then I think that we called that several months ago.
That we did.
Yeah, and Bogdan Bogdanovic, he's a great player. Everybody should be trying to get him too. And yeah, it's just disappointing that Sacramento, I mean, De'Aaron Fox was injured. Maybe I'm being too rough on them. On the other hand, fuck them. Fuck it all. No one gets excuses anymore.
Burn it all to the ground. Natty Wallach, 2020. Before we wrap up, before we leave it all behind us, quick, let's do studs and duds for the rest of the week. We do it every week. Player who's going to have a good rest of the week is our stud. Player who's going to struggle is our dud. Sometimes we throw in someone who we're excited to watch who's a bud. I will start us off. We'll knock these out real quick. My stud this week, you wrote about him on Fake Teams. Go read it. He's a must-add for your fantasy team. Evan Fournier is having a career year, and is well deserving to be on your fantasy team if he's available in your leagues, which likely he is. But for the rest of the week, he plays the Wizards and the Suns. That's easy points, easy buckets.
Yeah.
EFS, ride with him. If he's available on your waiver wire, add him, start him. He's a play for the rest of the week. Definite stud.
I am going to go with Joe Ingles on Utah. He gets to play the Knicks, the Hornets, and the Wizards. Ingles is not a guy that is generally going to score you 20 points, but he will give you like 16 points, 8 assists, 4 or 5 rebounds. He has nights where he gets close to a triple-double. I think he's just going to be a really strong play on an all-around stat level for the rest of the week. He's also shooting over 50% from 3 over the past month, I believe. He's looked fucking fantastic, and the Wizards don't play defense. The Knicks are the Knicks, and the Hornets are a young team that, they should get destroyed by the Utah Jazz if the Utah Jazz are actually as good as we think they are.
Yeah. Love him. Love the play. My dud for the week, it's bold, let the record show, but it's Luka. Not saying that he's going to be terrible. I'm putting a qualifier on.
Yes, you
this.
are.
That
is what you're saying, Pete.
That's exactly
How dare
what
you?
I'm saying. I'll put a qualifier on this, but he doesn't in the next 3 games for the rest of the week. Nuggets, Lakers, Sixers.
Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough.
That's fucking brutal is what it is. He has a target on his back.
Yeah. For my fantasy team, he's currently averaging 33 fantasy points per game, which is really carrying me to a championship level record. But I'm saying that for thank you. I'm saying that for the rest of the week, he averages under 25 fantasy points. So again, he's still a very productive fantasy player, but he is definitely he's going to take a noticeable step back for the rest of the week, and things won't be as easy for him as they have been this season.
What Pete is trying to say is that Luka Doncic sucks, and you should trade him if he's on your team, or just outright drop him, and you should stop watching Mavericks games. And I agree.
100%.
Yep.
And if you want to quote me on that, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, absolutely. Printed above the fold.
Yep.
My dud is another dude that I kind of want to qualify, but now I can't because I just called you out on it. LaMarcus Aldridge. LMA is going up against the Celtics, the Grizzlies, and the Raptors. And I just sort of feel like those are 3 bad matchups for him.
Yeah.
Having said that, I mean, the Raptors front court is injured, and maybe the Celtics will try attacking the Spurs guards more than maybe they'll be like, no, Aldridge can have his buckets. We're going to make sure nobody else does well. And then the Grizzlies, I'm hoping that they just run. But I don't think that Aldridge is going to have a great week. But he's still going to be, a top 50 fantasy player. So that's a qualifier. But I think he'll be worse than usual.
Yeah, I like it. Do you have a bud? I don't have anything, but if you got someone you're watching.
I do have a bud. My bud this week is Sergeant Russell Westbrook, who is playing the Hawks, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the Timberwolves.
All right.
The Hawks do not play defense, and they have Trae Young versus Westbrook. The Thunder is, playing his old team. And then the Timberwolves, they don't have anybody but Big Cat. I am convinced of that. I think that Westbrook, if there was ever going to be a 3-game stretch where Harden could sort of take off, maybe this is that 3-game stretch. I don't think that you need Harden to beat the Hawks. Harden was on the Thunder too, so he'll want to play that game. And I don't think you should need Harden to beat the Timberwolves either.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
If I was D'Antoni, I'd be like, listen, man, Harden, you get to rest 2 of these games. Russ, it's all on, you get to run the team for the next 5 days.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. Plus, revenge games. I mean, you can't say no to those.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. Players ball out in them, and then you ride them till you die with them.
And by the way, they're in 3rd place in the West, the Houston Rockets. So that pairing has turned out to be just fine.
Hasn't been trash. Just like this pairing has turned out just fine, hasn't it, Natty?
Nice fucking job.
Yeah,
right there.
baby.
I see what you did.
That's why they pay me the big bucks.
Exactly.
All right. Well, there you go. 2020 is here upon us officially, and so has the first show of the new decade dropped. Make sure to subscribe to the pod. We are everywhere you can get podcasts: iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. We're a part of the Fake Teams podcast channel, so search Fake Teams to subscribe to us. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at the Long2 Podcast. And we will be back at you to keep talking that good, sweet fantasy hoops. Maybe talk some trades that hopefully have gone down, or if not, wildly project and contest and reject. Natty, have a good week.
You do the same, man. Happy New Year, and happy basketball to everybody. Talk to you next week.